Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? Well, the answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. When I started using Anchor to do my podcast, it was so extremely easy that I haven't even bothered to look for another app to use. I love this app. It's the only one I deal with, the only one I even recommend, period. I recommend you get on there ASAP. If you want to start a podcast, this is definitely the place to go. It's easy. You can drive around and record. You can sit in your basement and record. You can do it anywhere. It's fantastic. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start, anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Adam Rich from the Really Rich Podcast. And listen, today I wanted to tell you about, or just talk to you in general about why I think it's a good idea for anybody at any time now, from this day forward, why you should start your own podcast. Now, this isn't like an advertisement. I'm not trying to tell you who you should or shouldn't go through, or what it should be about, or what, I'm not trying. This isn't some sales pitch. This is just my opinion on why I feel everyone in the future. You know how in the past, everyone, before the internet, obviously, when there wasn't even computers. Listen, if you're too young to even know what it was like before computers, listen up, because this shit is going to be a fucking eye-opener. I really honestly believe that. Before the internet ever came around, before computers ever came around, I remember, I'm old enough now to remember what it was like before computers. And when computers first hit the scene, I remember thinking how, and it wasn't just me, there's a lot of people thinking how it's futuristic, it's new technology that we don't really need, and not that many people are really even into it. But I do remember that there were some people on the other side of the aisle. There were people that were saying how this is the future and one day everyone will own a computer. But when they first came out, they were expensive. Basically only the wealthier people could afford it. And most people didn't really even give a shit, because the majority of people that were alive and adults and all that, before computers came around, they were used to functioning through life without it. So they didn't care if they had computers. They didn't care about owning, a desktop, because there was no such thing as a laptop back then. They didn't care about having a computer that had shit on it. And I'm talking before the internet was ever made, because a lot of people think that somehow computers and the internet came around at the same fucking time, and that's just not even remotely true. There was computers back in the 60s helping guide the fucking the moon landing mission. There was no internet during the moon landing mission. So computers have been out for a very long time, mostly used for gaming and computing and mathematics and storing information and shit like that. Had nothing to do with the internet. But then you fast forward. I remember that like people didn't really care about owning a computer. But then you fast forward to the time that the internet comes out, right? Now, I remember hearing about the internet and AOL and Instant Messenger and people communicating with each other over the internet. And I remember thinking, not just me, but lots of people, I remember there was the discussion of whether or not anybody would care about that, or how mainstream that was going to be, or how big that was going to be in the future. And some people said the internet was going to be huge and everyone's going to have it someday. Other people were like, no, I don't need it. Who cares? Like my grandma, it took her like 20 years after the internet was around before she even cared about using the internet, because the older generations don't care about upcoming technology. They get used to where they are in life. They get used to doing things certain ways. And then when new technology is introduced, they don't care. Cell phones, same shit. When cell phones came around, most of my grandparents and aunts and uncles, the older people, they were like, I don't need a cell phone. I can just call people when I get home. I don't need it. And then it became, well, what if I need it while I'm out? What if I need it for emergencies? So I'll just get a cell phone. I'll get it with zero data. No, there was no text messaging when they first came out. And a lot of them were just like, well, I'll just use it in case of emergencies. Now we see where cell phones are. Everybody has one. Fucking 10-year-olds have iPhones. It's incredible. The point that I'm getting at is all the technology when it first comes out, when people did radio back in like the 30s and 40s and all that, and then all of a sudden the TV was introduced, people in radio said, oh, this is just a niche thing, it's just a fad, it's just a trend, it'll go away, radio is the thing. Then what happened? Radio went bye-bye, TV became everything. People were now going from radio to being on TV, being in front of a camera. And now, look at what the internet's doing to TV. Most people don't even watch TV that much anymore. I mean, if you do, it's very little. Before, the source of all your information was given to you through either the TV or a newspaper. Now, who the fuck reads newspapers? If you're reading a newspaper, it's an online newspaper. You're reading the newspaper that's put online. You're not reading an actual physical copy of the newspaper. They barely even exist anymore. And so this is where I'm headed with this, is that the reason why I feel like everyone should start on their own podcast now is because I feel like within 10 to 15 years, every damn person that's on the internet, online, will have their own podcast. And there's a very good reason for it. When Facebook first came out, it was all for college kids. Everyone that was in college had most kids that were in college had Facebook. If you didn't go to college, if you weren't enrolled in a university or a college of some kind, community, college, whatever, you couldn't even get into Facebook. You couldn't. I remember I had my ex-girlfriend. She was on Facebook because she was going to school. I wasn't in school. I couldn't get on Facebook. She was doing all kinds of shit on Facebook, talking to all kinds of people. I had no Facebook. All I had was MySpace, and MySpace is gone now. You know why? Because they didn't adapt with the times. Facebook introduced a bunch of new features, basically wiped out MySpace. MySpace didn't adapt. And that's what happens with all of these things. There was no YouTube in 2001 when I graduated. There was no social media. Facebook was just kind of starting out as a college program, basically. In 2002, I remember, is when 2002 or 2003, somewhere in there. Maybe even a little bit later. I'm pretty sure it was 2002 or 2003. But the point is, in the year 2000, this is 19 fucking years, almost 20 years ago, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no Snapchat, Instagram, Tinder, like any app you can think of, any social media platform, any video live streaming service, none of it existed 20 years ago, which is fucking wild to me because I vividly remember what it was like 20 years ago. I remember being in high school and not having a cell phone. I remember having a pager. Pagers went bye-bye. You know why? Because they didn't adapt to becoming as good as a cell phone. So technology is always going to move forward. We can fight it as long as possible. I did the same thing. I didn't want to learn about computers. I said, well, my life's good enough without computers. I don't think I'm going to need it that much. And here we are today. And I'm only 36, dude. This isn't like I'm some 60-year-old man who's like, oh, I'm just going to read my newspaper and watch Matlock and the Golden Girls and shit. I'm not doing none of those things. I'm a young kid still, basically. And yet, I have watched this progression happen dramatically and super fucking fast. And what I've realized is you can either get on board or on the train or whatever. You can either get on board now and ride that shit as long as possible and try to stay up with the times and be good at this stuff and use it for your advantage, or you can watch the shit pass you by for so long until you have no choice but to get caught up. Because let's be honest, print is not coming back. Paper trails, filing cabinets, yellow pages, resumes, everything. It's all done online now. Everything's done through computers. Newspapers, magazines and shit, it's dead. I mean, they're on their way out. They're not completely dead. You can still find a newspaper. You can still find magazines. But as far as them being mainstream and huge like they used to be, that shit is over. They're done. So you can either adapt with the technology that's given to you. You can adapt and try to make things better and be on that wave. You can ride the wave with it, or you can let it pass you by and then play catch up like I had to do. But here's where we're going with this. Facebook started out on college, like with college campuses and things like that. Now it's everywhere. Then it got to the point where, like, after the college campuses, then it became mainstream for younger people. But I remember people that were in their 40s and 50s and 60s, they wanted nothing to do with it. They were like, yeah, I don't need Facebook. That's more for the younger kids. Now, who's on Facebook? Basically, only people between the ages of 30 to 70 are the people that are on Facebook. Instagram, when it started out, it was purely made for people that like to have good photos, have good filters, make good shots. It was basically for photographers. Where is it at now? It's for girls wanting to show their tits and ass. It's for people wanting to advertise their products and whatever they're doing, whatever they're making, whatever they're a part of. It's basically just a connection. It's using photos and memes to let people connect with you and who you are. That's what it's turned into. Snapchat, it was starting to get huge with all the filters and all these things. Then Instagram made one big power move. Now there's people still on Snapchat, of course, but Snapchat's not what it used to be. You can pretty much do almost anything on Instagram that you can do on Snapchat. And same with Tumblr. Tumblr was huge like 5-6 years ago. Now nobody uses it. It's basically a fucking ghost town on there. It's like MySpace. You can still find some people on there, but barely anyone uses it. And look at Twitter. Twitter wasn't even a fucking thing like 10, 15 years ago. Whatever. I don't know the exact year it came out. I didn't do a bunch of research on Twitter before I fucking started this. But the point is, Twitter started with nothing. It didn't exist. YouTube, same shit. YouTube was for a bunch of weird little like home videos and things. And now you can literally find out how to do anything, anywhere, at any fucking time. You can have your own podcast, your own show. You can put it right onto YouTube. Ad companies will pay you eventually when you have enough subscribers and enough views. Like everything is done online now. And now it brings me to the podcast. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. The reason why you should definitely have your own podcast is because I fully believe that in the future, everyone's going to have their own podcast because it is a way of making a little bit of money or a lot of money depending on how big you are and what you're doing and how many followers or what your audience looks like. But the bigger thing about podcasting is I've noticed it's almost like a live diary. You can talk about certain things about yourself, about your life. You can basically let the world know about you and what you believe in, what your thoughts are, what you feel like, how you think. You can do all this shit. You can discuss anything. You can talk about anything you want on your podcast. You can make several podcasts about different topics so you can have different shit. And then on top of that, you have the ability or the option to potentially make money just by doing shit that you like, that you talk about. You know, you can do a podcast, you can make it audio and video, you can put it anywhere, you can put it on YouTube, Spotify, all these things. People can either watch videos about you doing certain shit, like you can go home and cook every meal you make, you can videotape yourself making it, you can talk to the camera about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then you can put it up on YouTube and people can literally watch that shit. And then if enough followers or enough subscribers pay attention, ad companies will get in there and they will offer you so much money per video or per ad just to have their product on your page. Like, there's potential to make money on your fucking diary, basically. You can literally do a podcast right now. You can talk into a microphone or a video camera for 20 minutes a day, every day, about what happened yesterday, what happened in your morning, what happened to your life, what you plan on doing today. You can videotape it, send it out, make it audio, make it written, put it out everywhere. And there's potential to make money. Like, there's no good reason to not do one, you know, other than the fact that it takes time. That's literally the only thing. And to be honest with you, if you do it through, and like I said, this isn't an ad, but I'm just being honest. If you do it through Anchor, you have the ability to do it from your fucking phone while you're driving. I do it all the time. You know? So you can talk to your phone like it's a person on the other line. tell people everything that you're doing or what you're interested in or advice you want to give or teach people about stuff. You can do all of that while you're fucking driving in your car. You don't even have to look into a camera. You can just, if you're doing audio now, or you can set up your phone to do audio and then, or do video and all that. Then you can upload the video to YouTube, however you want to do it, dude. And it's insane to me that and it's free. That's the thing, is it's insane that you can do all of these things and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Now you can get into more unique services and like pay extra for certain features and things like that, but you don't have to. Like, it's insane to me how available it is to do, and yet there's so many people doing podcasts now, and the only way to really stand out is to be unique. But I feel like if you're being yourself 100% of the time, by definition, you are unique. You know, if you're being yourself, nobody in the entire history of the earth has ever been just like you. Nobody on earth today is just like you, and nobody in the future will ever be just like you. As far as your combination of talent, looks, abilities, time period, setting of where you grew up, where you're at now, who your family is, your friends, your job, all this shit. Nobody has ever had your exact combination. So by definition, you are infinitely rare. And that is what you bring to the table. Now, if you do a podcast just about your life in general and about you and whatever it is that you feel like you have to offer to the world, that is your gift. That is what you bring to the table. That is what makes you unique in your own personal story. And when you share that with the world, depending on how relatable you are or how likable you are or what you bring to the table, what you bring to your podcast, that's what's going to bring people in and keep them coming back. So even if you have like 2 listeners, it's like, why would you not want to do this? Why would you not at least want, even if you have 0 listeners, eventually, think about it. You document all this shit, even if you have 0 listeners for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, you make one thing that everyone wants to hear, everyone wants to be a part of, one quote unquote viral episode, that could change everything. And then people can go back and watch all your old shit or listen to all your old shit, and maybe they're going to get crazy amounts of value then. Some people will find out who you are later once you've built a legacy, and then they're like, well, damn, I want to see how he started. I want to see what it was like at the beginning. And then they want to go back and watch all the history of you. Imagine if guys like Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods could have documented their whole lives from the time they were kids to the time they became the greatest of all time. Imagine that, dude. Imagine if you would have gotten to see what the greatest of all time, what their upbringing was like, what their childhood was like, what their early 20s was like, their late 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, or 60s. Imagine if you could see all of it and what they were like, and then you could understand what greatness, how it unfolds, what it's like, what kind of adversity they went through, how did they handle it, what kind of fuck-ups did they make, what kind of bounce back did they make, the resilience that they showed, the mental toughness that it took to be able to bounce back from all the adversity. Like, to be able to document all that and then witness it and watch it play out almost like a history lesson is incredible. Imagine if you would have been able to see people like George Washington, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. Imagine if you would have been able to see what their life was like and unfolding, and then seen the before, during, and after of all these epic events that we now know of later on. You're going to have that one day. And people, I fully believe that by 2030, maybe we'll say 2040. Maybe I'm giving people a little too much credit or giving too much credit to the podcast universe. But I fully believe by 2040, 2050, our entire world is going to be changed to the point where everyone is going to be recording and documenting everything, and only the greatest stories, or only the true stories, only the non-manipulative pieces of shit, only the non-versions of that, only the good people. Only the righteous, the good storytellers, only the real ones are going to be the ones that people care to watch. You're going to have all the bullshitters are going to be exposed because you're going to see how their life unfolded. You're going to see the story that they're telling, and either their whole life document is going to be bullshit, or you're going to see some real truth out there, and it's going to draw you towards it. And it's going to be amazing. So I fully believe everyone should be starting on a podcast. Everyone should be doing it ASAP. Document your life. You don't even have to put it out there. If you don't want people to hear it, don't. But maybe you'll want it for your children one day. Maybe you'll want it to hand down like a legacy. Like I've heard of Leonardo, not DiCaprio, but Leonardo da Vinci. He wrote books and tons of crazy information about shit that they never found while he was alive. It was after he was dead, and they had to go through his house and his belongings, and they found secret documents and secret information and secret like passages of things that he wrote about to basically be able to dive into what his mind was like. Like, isn't that crazy? That's awesome. And imagine if you had that, but only in written, video, or audio form for the whole world to learn about you after you're gone. Even if you don't want them to know about it while you're alive. But the fact that you can document it all and share it with the world, and people can learn to know so much more about you and who you are and how your mind worked and how you ticked, you know, like that's incredible to me. And I fully believe that once everyone catches on to this and they all feel the exact same way, everybody's going to be doing this. You might say right now today, like, fuck that, I don't want to do that. And then you don't have to. And I would never knock you for not doing it. You don't have to. I'm not trying to persuade people to do it. I just feel like that's the direction that people are going. I just fully believe that it's the same thing as the internet and social media and all that. It's all this technology that podcasting is a new form of technology, basically, that allows people to do these things. And a lot of people right now are like, I'm not going to use that. I don't care about that. I don't need that. My life is fine without it. I can function with it. All the same shit that was said about all these apps and the internet and computers and cell phones, all these things that people thought they would never need or they didn't care about, eventually it becomes standard. It becomes mainstream. Imagine one day when somebody wants to hire based on, well, let me see if they got a podcast, because that's going to tell me how they act, who they are, what they talk like, what they sound like, what they think like. I'll be able to listen to their podcast for 2 weeks before I worry about hiring them. And then after I hear all this shit, I can get a good understanding of what they think like and how they sound. Then maybe I'll hire them. It's going to be like a living fucking resume. So I highly recommend start making a podcast. Be very thoughtful in your intent about what you're trying to put out. I honestly feel like if you're going to start a podcast today, only put your best foot forward. Don't try to bamboozle people. Don't try to trick them, manipulate people into thinking you're something that you're not. Don't talk about shit that you don't know about just for cheap, views and cheap likes and cheap follows just to build up an audience. Be authentic, because one day it's going to come back to you. We're seeing it now in small form where people are now starting to go back 10 years to see what people put on Twitter, just so 10 years later they can say, no, that guy said fag once when he was 13 years old. Fuck him. Don't ever let him have a job again. And it's insanity to do that. But that's what they're doing. So the point is, don't put out bullshit that don't be an asshole and put that out to the world, because 20 years from now, that shit may come back to haunt you. So I highly recommend be a good person, do the right thing, document everything, and always put kindness and empathy and happiness and positivity at the forefront of what you're trying to do. And that way, if anybody goes back and looks 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and they look back and they see what you put out, you got the same consistent, good-natured shit. And somebody can be like, damn, he's been talking like this for 40 fucking years. This isn't made up. He really feels that way. She really feels that way. Like, dude, the majority of people do not understand the opportunity that's in front of them right now, and they can start on it while the attention is low. There's a low supply. That's what I should say. Not the attention's low, but the supply is low, but the attention's high, because almost everybody listens to a podcast now. And 5 years ago, most people didn't. 5 years ago, I don't think I've ever listened to anybody's podcast 5 years ago. In fact, I thought it sounded weird. The idea of a podcast, I didn't even like saying the word podcast 5 years ago. I was like, that's weird. Podcast? That sounds strange to say. Even today, it sounds kind of strange. But I'm so used to it. It's just second nature. Just like the internet. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, nobody fucking said anything about the internet. Well, 30 to 40 years ago, nobody said anything about the internet. 20 years ago, barely anybody had cell phones. Nobody 20 years ago talked about YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Nobody. 5 years ago, nobody said a word about LinkedIn. Not even the guy that started LinkedIn said the word LinkedIn. You know? No, I'm sure he probably did, but that's a joke. But anyway, that's the point. Technology and shit moves so fast. I was against it when it first started happening. I said, I don't care about this. I'm not going to need this. I don't care to learn it and get involved in it. I only care to learn things that I care about. Well, guess what? Eventually, you're going to care about it. And now it's going to be too late because everybody's going to have one. So you're going to be starting the game way too late. For the first 30 years of my life, I didn't give a fuck about taking pictures. Now, I take pictures and videos of my wife and my child all the time. Now, I don't share a lot of it because it's for me. I do it for me. But I don't regret anything because, regret's a strong word. I do wish that I cared more in the past about taking pictures. Do I regret it? No, it is what it is. I am where I'm at now. We're good. We're fine. However, it would be kind of fucking cool to have a lot more pictures of me as like a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old. There ain't a lot of, you try to find pictures of me as a 15 or 20-year-old, you're going to find some, barely. I got like 1 or 2 pictures on any of my social medias from me as an 18-year-old. Anything before that, I don't think I have any. I might have 1 or 2 pictures out there in social media ever of me before I'm 20 years old. And I wish I had more, to be honest with you. So all I'm saying is don't wait until you're 60 to start a fucking podcast. If you care at all about technology or where you might be or what may benefit you in the future, it isn't going to hurt. Just make sure your intent is right. Because if your intentions are shit, they will be exposed later. You may not think, you may think that you've outsmarted the system and, oh, I got it. I'll just do it like this. Cool. Go ahead. 20 years from now, that shit will be exposed. We're going to have better technology. We're going to have better sources of being able to pinpoint bullshit from people. Everything is getting advanced and it's happening quickly. Just don't wait too long is all I'm trying to say. Get on board. Start yourself a podcast. Trust me, the shit is happening. 5 years ago, barely anybody did a podcast. Now, there's so many podcasts out there. And I believe this stuff, man. I believe that it's going to be huge. I believe that it's going to be the same as Facebook and YouTube. Everybody's going to be on it. Everybody is going to be on the podcast bandwagon at some point. When you realize that anything that you care about, you can start talking about it regularly, and there's a chance that somebody might pay you for it at some point, why not? If you like talking about it and you like helping people and you like teaching people about what it is that you feel you know best, then do that, dude. Stop dicking around. Stop waiting. Get on it right now. Start on it. Like I said, I'm not advertising for anything. All I know is this. I started with Anchor. I'm still with Anchor because it's so fucking convenient. Even if you suck. Listen, when I did my very first podcast ever, I did it through Anchor. I'm still with Anchor. I did it not knowing at all how it was going to turn out, not knowing if anybody was ever going to hear it, didn't know if anyone would ever give a shit about it. And I made one. It sucked, but I did it anyway. And doing it from the app, from my cell phone, sitting in my living room while I was watching TV. I did my very first one ever. And it was weak as fuck, I'll be honest. But it was so easy. I just had to I had to download the app, hit a button, start talking to it. It recorded everything. And then once you just go through a couple like setup features or whatever, you can upload it right to the internet right then and there. And then it starts getting distributed to Spotify and Google Podcasts. And then you can ask to other places to be involved, like Apple Podcast and Castbox, Spreaker, Breaker, like any podcast platform you can fucking think of. The point is, I sat in my living room, I hit a couple of buttons, talked into my phone for 10 minutes, uploaded that shit about nonsense. It sounded terrible, but that's just because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But everything else was done so quick, so easy, so instantly, and the features have only gotten better since then. That's about a year and a half ago now that I did my first. I think it was April of 2018. I did my very first one ever, and it was like right after watching the Masters golf tournament. Matter of fact, I think it's off of there now. I think I deleted it just because it was so shitty. But I do have my intro, which was the very next podcast, the very next one I did, and I think I did it like a couple months later. Like I sat on it for a while. I didn't do shit for a while. It was beautiful. So it's just so easy. I highly recommend it with everybody, dude. You got to do this. If not, it's going to pass you by and you're going to come back and be like, damn, he was right. And if not, don't worry about it. I mean, there's no judgment, dude. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be fucking huge. The same way the internet got huge, cell phones got huge, computers got huge, Facebook got huge, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, they're all getting huge. Podcasting is next. And it's literally forever. Everyone can do it. Everyone's got something to say. Everyone can talk about their life experiences. It's like writing a fucking audiobook about yourself if you want to. Just do it. It's so worth it. But that's all I want to tell you guys today, man. I love you guys, and I thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. Please, if you have any comments, you know how to find me through Anchor. You can leave a voice message. You can find me Instagram at Really Rich Podcast. On Twitter, it's Really Rich Adam. Snapchat and YouTube, it's just Really Rich. And LinkedIn is Adam Rich. Find me on LinkedIn, please. I'm trying to connect with everybody. I love you guys, and I thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon, all right? Peace. I'm out of here.